We continue to count down the days until the first round of the NFL draft, and what do experts believe that the Raiders could be doing with their first round pick? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 9th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. Show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of you, Raider Nation, your consistent support. We definitely thank you for that. Also, we thank my man Ari, who does a great job each and every day making sure we're looking good on YouTube, we're sounding good on YouTube, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing on YouTube. So shout out to my man Ari. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. Of course, you can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. As always, a lot of great feedback. We'll do that in segment number 3. We'll get your calls and texts. Again, Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for anyone who doesn't have the number, 707-654-4693. I got a direct message on Monday, someone asking me about Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, and why do I sound like I have confidence in those guys moving forward when, well, the Raiders have had a lot of coaches and the Raiders have had a lot of GMs, and they haven't led them in the right direction. So we'll address that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes, as I always collect, just a little bit of stuff here and there when it comes to the draft. We'll do that here in segment number 1. We'll get to it as soon as I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show. But right now, off top, again, news and notes. Want to give you the latest and the greatest when it comes to Pro Football Focus and their latest mock draft. And it's funny, I tell you all the time, and I think I talked about it quite a bit on Monday's show, that there's a new flavor of the month when it comes to quarterbacks and who's hot at the right time and who's peaking at the right time. And there's going to be a lot of shift in who's peaking between now and April 25th. But on Pro Football Focus, latest mock draft, they have Caleb Williams going number 1 to the Bears. He's been the, start to finish number 1 overall pick. Drake May, number 2 to the Commanders. So it's already shifted. Think about the shift that we've seen from it's Jaden Daniels, to now it's Drake May. And I know that guys like Colin Cowherd, he's come out and said that he's heard the Commanders are taking Jaden Daniels, no doubt about it. But that also could be them just throwing a little bit of a smokescreen up there, letting it be known that they're going to take Jaden Daniels when, in fact, they're taking Drake May. None of us really know. But I just love the fact that it shifts so much. There's so many changes. So Drake May is now listed at number 2 overall to the Commanders. At 3, Jaden Daniels to the Patriots. And there's been a lot of conversation about the Patriots and them being interested in trading out of that spot. I do believe where there's smoke, there's fire, that there's a good chance that they do want to trade out of that spot and get as much capital as back in return so they can address all the needs that they have on the team. I'm not saying that that means that the Raiders are going to get up there and get Jaden Daniels. I still believe, as I was told at the scouting combine, you want Jaden Daniels, you got to get up to the number 2 spot. I'm going to go ahead and stick with that until I'm proven wrong, right? Again, whenever I'm told some information that I feel to be very, very accurate, I like to bring it to the show and let you know what it is. So, again, they have Jaden Daniels going number 3 to the Patriots. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals at 4. Okay, so not really too much of a shakeup outside of the fact that Drake May is number 2 and Jaden Daniels is number 3. But here's where it starts to get a little freaky. The Vikings traded up with the Chargers at number 5 and took the 4th quarterback off the board in J.J. McCarthy. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, he goes to the G-Men at 6. Joe Alt to the Titans at 7. Dallas Turner to the Falcons at 8. Rome Odunze to the Bears at number 9. Brock Bowers to the Jets at number 10. So not a whole lot of, moving and shaking, just, the Vikings moving up as we all expect that they're going to do as they have the 2 first-round picks and have the ability to do that. Now, with that being said, the Vikings have gone up to number 5, got their guy J.J. McCarthy, so that means that the Chargers go back to number 11. they have Fuaga, the offensive tackle out of Oregon State, going number 11 overall to the Chargers. And I would not be shocked at all to see the Chargers go get offensive tackle with their first-round pick. I know that they need a wide receiver, but this draft is pretty deep in wide receivers, so they can go and address that a little bit later on, especially if they do trade back, like a lot of people think that they might trade back. They'll get some extra capital as well. Bo Nix to the Broncos at number 12, which leaves Michael Penix Jr. 13 to the Raiders. And they say the 1983 NFL draft set the record for the most first-round quarterbacks with 6 hearing their names called. This class not only has a strong chance of tying that record, but all 6 could go in the top 15. And if you count it up, they have 6 quarterbacks going in the top 13. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and then Michael Penix. They also said Penix has NFL-level arm talent and was one of the best signal callers in college football in each of the past 2 seasons. I've let it be known multiple times that I have no problem with Michael Penix. I like him a lot. He's actually QB number 2 for me, obviously behind Jaden Daniels. If Jaden Daniels wasn't in this draft, I'd say it's Michael Penix, and everyone else is playing for second. But because of Jaden Daniels, because of the relationship with AP, I got him number 1, Michael Penix at number 2. I had Stacey Joe Ross from Seattle Sports. She was on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Monday, and we were going through our ultimate mock draft, and she was making the pick at number 16 for Seattle. And, of course, since she's in Seattle, she's covered the Washington Huskies like a glove. I've actually had her on my ESPN show talking about Washington leading up to the national championship game. So wanted you to hear what she had to say about Michael Penix. You'll hear me ask the question about him and then a couple follow-ups as well, including does she think Seattle could be a destination where they look at Geno Smith as the starter right now, but not the long term? Maybe they can make a move for one Michael Penix Jr. So here's Stacey Joe Ross. You'll hear my question about Michael Penix from my radio show on Monday.
I want to get into all things Seahawks, but I also want to talk about Michael Penix. I know you cover UW like a glove as well. You saw them on their run to the national championship game. He visited with the Raiders last week. What could you tell us about the young man as he was the starting quarterback there for the Huskies?
I think what Michael Penix is wildly underrated. Wildly underrated. I think people see him as an older quarterback. They see that he's got some miles on him. They see a very notable and frankly concerning injury history, and they go, okay, I'm going to hit pause. He is the best pure passer in this class, period. He is also more mobile and more athletic than people give him credit for. I think if this draft was not 2024 but was 2004, I'm convinced Michael Penix would be one of the first quarterbacks taken in the class. Like he is a more traditional pocket passer, but he can move and he can throw on the go. Maybe it's because he's a lefty, he's got more of an unconventional kind of motion with it, but I am so curious to see him. I'm fully convinced, and this is just me being like hot take artist sports radio, as you know, of these top picks, Drake May, Jaden, I'll throw JJ in, who I think is going to go top 6, top 7. These guys all have major question marks too.
Yeah.
Major question marks. I think people see Michael Penix as having a slightly lower ceiling because they feel like they saw the best of Penix. The best of Penix was playing behind one of the best offensive lines, with NFL-ready wide receivers. But I think that that's a really amazing version of him. And just because you think you've seen that ceiling doesn't mean he can't try to hit that in the pros. So all he has to worry about is staying healthy. I think he has all the weapons to succeed in the NFL, and I am so curious about where his story takes him.
Well, is there any chance in your mind that Seattle, sitting there at 16, who has his former offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, says, you know what, we need someone to sit behind Geno Smith, and it's not going to be Sam Howell, it's going to be Michael Penix?
I've entertained the possibility, and we have certainly talked about it locally, but that is not who I have the Seahawks taking.
You think any chance that they were to try to trade up and go and make that move?
Ooh, I think that so here's the only reason I say no. And I do think that they are willing to be aggressive with John, even though he typically trades back. They don't have a second rounder. They traded that second rounder at last year's midseason trade deadline for Leonard Williams. Thankfully extended Williams, so they made the most of it. Threw in one of 2 third-rounders for a trade of Sam Howell to bring him in as a backup, and then obviously guaranteed Geno's money for this year and tried to move some of that burden into next season. They've made moves that would tell you this is a team that is not getting a quarterback at pick number 16, though I think that this is absolutely a class in which they will take one. I don't know if it's going to be a Spencer Rattler type who goes much later, but John Schneider has previously, I think I've talked to you about this, lamented not drafting more quarterbacks with Russell Wilson. He drafted 1 quarterback after taking Russell Wilson, and then obviously acquired Drew Lock via trade, Geno via free agency. So I think he's itching to be able to get a passer. I just don't think it'll be in the first round.
So I thought that was some good information right there from Stacey Joe. Does a fantastic job covering Seattle sports for Seattle sports. And of course, talking all things Seahawks. That's why she was on my show. But a good breakdown right there of Michael Penix Jr. So he's a guy that's been getting a lot of love. He's a guy that's been getting a lot of attention. He's another one of those guys that's kind of I don't want to say peaking at the right time, but it feels like he's peaking right now as opposed to some others, right? I mentioned it before. Jaden Daniels was a guy that was, his name was real hot for a while. J.J. McCarthy's name was scorching hot for a while. It seems like Michael Penix is really that guy. Now, again, how many times more will it shift between now and the first round on April 25th? Well, we'll find out sooner rather than later. But speaking of Jaden Daniels, and this audio is not going to be that great, but I just wanted to pass it along anyway, just because I thought it was kind of cool. And, we'll see what ends up happening. But Jaden Daniels and wide receiver Malik Neighbors, of course, they were both at LSU together. We're on Instagram Live, and we've been seeing this quite a bit. We've been seeing a lot of these players throw out the tea leaves about, the Raiders and Jaden Daniels. And even Brandon Ayuk had said, what he had to say about the Raiders and Jaden Daniels. We're all going to get together with Antonio Pierce. And obviously, they all have connections going back to Arizona State. Well, Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors were talking, doing an Instagram Live. They were answering a bunch of questions, and Jaden had mentioned, talking about Malik Neighbors and where he was going to go and where he wasn't going to go. Someone said, Malik's going to go to the Chargers. If he doesn't go to the Chargers, I'll cry. So Jaden Daniels said, well, it looks like you're going to be crying. So with that being said, Malik Neighbors said, okay, well, you're going to talk about where I'm going to go. I'm going to talk about where you're going in this draft. So here's what Malik Neighbors had to say about Jaden Daniels, where he could end up in this draft. And again, the audio is not fantastic, but you'll get the point of it.
If you want to do all that, I'm going to say where he going. And y'all never going to believe it.
Wow.
He might be part of the old homie.
Wow. That's what you want to do? That's what you want to do? Okay.
He might be partners with his old homie.
I don't know what you talking about.
I'll let y'all guess.
How you, bro?
So, team back up with old homie. Obviously, old homie is Antonio Pierce. Again, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that, hey, book it. Jaden Daniels is a Raider. But, again, it's been a lot of that conversation that's been going on out there. A lot of Instagram Live, a lot of these different social media posts from these different players. And, of course, AP has a great connection with a lot of these guys. So I'm sure that none of them would mind playing for AP. But unless Jaden Daniels is planning on pulling some kind of power move, which I don't see him doing, there's a big difference between the money at number 2 and the money at number 13 in the draft. So, I don't see him pulling some kind of power move like an Eli Manning type thing. Now, if the Raiders were up in the top 4 or 5, maybe he could make a suggestion like, hey, I'm not going to show up. I want to trade me to that team or whatever. I could see that. But again, that's the avenue that we'll cross when we get there if that situation were to occur. I don't think it will. But then again, that's just me. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, speaking of AP, why do I have confidence in Antonio Pierce? Why do I have confidence in Tom Telesco as a 1-2 punch? Got the question on my Twitter, on direct message. Got that on Monday. We'll pass that along, and I'll talk about it coming up next in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors we have here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, and that is BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, and this is the million-dollar question, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? Now, you know me well enough. If I had more time, what would I do? More shows, right? I mean, that's what I do. I would do more shows. But that's kind of me just being, caught up in the moment, right? So, in reality, time is so important, right? And the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you. So you really got to get your priorities straight. I have to tell myself a lot as well. You've got to make what's important to you a priority. Therapy can help you find out what matters to you so you can do more of it. Sometimes you just need that. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch the therapist anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the conversation of why I feel pretty confident about AP and Tom Telesco moving forward, as obviously AP, first-time head coach as the full-time guy, interim last year, get what he did the last 9 games. But a lot of times, the interim coach, if he does get the job, doesn't turn out to be that guy. I feel differently about Antonio Pierce. I think he's going to make it happen, and really felt very confident that he was going to be the guy to get the job pretty early on when it came to him being the interim. It didn't take a whole lot of time. It didn't take all 9 games for me to say, yeah, he's the right guy for the job. Now, when it came to the GM, I was not sure what direction they were going to go. I thought that they were going to probably go with Champ Kelly. Just made all the sense in the world. They didn't. They ended up going with Tom Telesco. So why am I going to talk about those? Well, my guy, Matt Lombardo, who covers the NFL like a glove, does a fantastic job on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL, actually sent me a piece talking about the Raiders sending Devontae Adams to move up in the NFL draft for a quarterback. Former executive of the year says that would have my attention. And so he sent it to me, and I said, interesting. And again, I don't just take everything at face value and say, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's good, or yeah, that's going to happen. I saw it and I said, interesting. And then I followed up and said, yeah, I just don't see that happening. I think Telesco and AP, wouldn't want to do that. I think that they have a better plan. And so then he asked me, follow up, well, how do you feel about, the guys? How do you feel about Telesco? How are you feeling about AP? Do you think that they're headed in the right direction? And that got me thinking, because I easily could just say yes, but I thought, okay, let me give him a yes and a why. So I thought I'd bring it to the table as well, and would love to hear from you. 707-654-4693. Would love to know your confidence level with Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce as the 1-2 punch. But for me, AP, he screams Raider, right? I think the confidence level with AP is easy, right? I think it's very easy for Raider Nation and myself to get behind him and say, yeah, he's the right guy for the job. Just look at the identity he brought back to the team. Just look at how he opened things up where players can be more themselves and really let loose, right? So that's one thing. Now, it's one thing to do it as an interim. Now you've got to do it when you are going through the offseason program, which is going to start for the Raiders on April 15th. When you're doing, the rookie mini camps, when you're doing training camp, when you're doing preseason, when you're helping figure out who's going to be on the 53-man roster, not the 90-man roster. And obviously during the season, the 17-game season, what are you going to do? It's a win-loss league. So everything that AP was able to do as an interim coach was great. It was fun. The storylines have been awesome, and he earned the job. Now he's got to go build on that, and he knows that. So just talking to him, being around him, just, the way that he has confidence, the way that he's earned everything in his life, it's not like anything's been given to him. He struggled just like a lot of folks have struggled to get where they need to go, and then eventually was able to break through. I have all the confidence in the world that he's going to get it done. Tom Telesco, obviously, is another question. Now, Tom Telesco did some really good things with the Chargers GM in bringing in talent. The one thing he wasn't able to do, bringing in the head coach. And this is where the yin and the yang between Telesco and AP really work. AP is loud. AP will say what's on his mind. He probably tells the truth more than he should, right? He says exactly what's on his mind all the time, to the point where you know what he's thinking. Telesco's very to himself. He's very quiet. As he told us at the Combine, he says, hey, I don't mind AP doing all the talking because I don't talk very often. And he's very calculated, and he's got the experience to be there, done that. Now, he knows what AP wants. He knows that he wants Jaden Daniels, and that doesn't mean that the Raiders are going to get Jaden Daniels, but he knows what he wants. And the GM's job is to get the players in place that the coaches need, right? Whether that's on offense, whether that's on defense, whether that's in special teams, it's supply the coaches with the players that they need to go get it done and to be able to do their job at the highest power. So, he's gone through free agency. Grabbing Christian Wilkins was a huge that was one of those things that was a priority. They landed him immediately. They've been very, chill and pretty quiet during free agency. Again, it's kind of surprised me, but he's doing everything in a calculated manner, right? And so the thing about it is, I'm very confident in him because I don't think he's going to do something that we're going to look at and come back on, April 26th before the second round, like after the first round of the draft gets wrapped up and I go do the podcast. I don't think I'm going to come to the podcast and be like, what the hell was that? What in the world was that? Wait, at 13? Like I did with Alex Leatherwood. Leatherwood? At 17? Leatherwood? Right? Or Damon Arnett? I got to go do some research on who the hell Damon Arnett is, right? Or something like that. Or hey, Klee at 4? Like, no disrespect. Good guy, good player. Not at 4. not his fault. He got selected there. He didn't ask to be selected there. But, I mean, I don't think that we'll be talking about big surprises. I have a feeling that when this draft is all said and done, at least the selections that are made are going to have rhyme and reason. They're going to make sense, right? And I believe all the areas that we all have identified as need, offensive line, right, quarterback, cornerback potentially, like all the areas that need to be addressed will be addressed. And I do believe that there's still a chance that the Raiders could move up. I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and say that that's definitely going to happen because we don't know, right? We don't know what they're going to do, who they're talking to. I've said it 1,000 times. I think it makes more sense for them to get something done now. Obviously, that would be in the favor of the Raiders than it would be like, say, Washington. Washington, I'm sure, wants to wait until draft day and then get the most bang for their buck, right? Oh, you want number 2? Okay, well, here, you got to give us all that and then some. So, I think for the Raiders, it makes more sense to get a trade done sooner rather than later. But, again, that's on their time. They'll got to figure that out, and you got to have a trade partner to be able to do that. But I think Telesco is enough. It has enough experience in the game, has enough skins on the wall where he's able to realize, like, okay, this is something that makes sense. For what we have, what our plan is in place, how we want to attack this season, this makes sense for us to be able to do that. If they can't do that, I say it all the time, you have to have a plan B. You have to have a plan C. You have to have a plan D. You can't just base it off of, okay, we're going to throw all these eggs in one basket and this is how it's going to shake out. Like, it normally does not happen like that. And I use my own, mock draft as just a perfect example. Like, you think and then all of a sudden a team jumps up or someone jumps up and says, yeah, this is who I want at this number. And you're like, whoa, I didn't see that happening, right? More times than not, though, that's been the Raiders that have done that, jumped up and grabbed somebody, and other teams say, whoa, didn't see that happening. Problem is, it hasn't been for a great player, so it hasn't thrown a monkey wrench in their plan. Actually, it ended up giving a great player to a team that's picking behind the silver and black. I don't think that that's going to be the case this year, again, based off of the experience that Tom Telesco has. And I really believe that that's why Mark Davis wanted to make sure he got an experienced guy. And I know most people saw that Tom Telesco came from the Chargers, and the Chargers, have underachieved for years on top of years on top of years. And the last straw was the Chargers giving up 63 points to the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. Then him and Brandon Staley both get fired, but he wasn't coaching them up. So I don't hold that against him. But in the brief conversations that we've had with him, and again, he doesn't talk a lot, I just get that sense of he's very confident in what he's doing. Mark Davis had said something last year at the owners' meetings in Phoenix that really stood out to me about Dave Ziegler, and I have a lot of respect for Dave Ziegler. I know everyone doesn't, but that's okay. It's just my opinion. I have a lot of respect for him, but he said the thing about Dave is he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he's got colleagues around the league that aren't really telling him everything. So basically what he meant by that is he's still learning. And some of the guys that he's leaning on and getting advice from aren't really giving him 100% of the truth. Well, the thing about Tom Telesco is he doesn't have to lean on guys because he has so much experience in the game. So, again, I feel like the inexperience of AP, where AP might say, all right, I want Jaden Daniels, so take everything. He might pull a Mike Ditka type move, right? Here, take everything. Because as long as we have that guy, Jaden Daniels, this team's going to be great. Where Tom Telesco is going to say, well, hold on, dog. Hold on. I know you want to get out there and get your guy. We could still go attempt to get your guy, but we're not giving up everything, right? We're not going to give up, as many people have pointed out on the podcast, giving up the farm for the guy. We're going to do what's reasonable. This is value right here, and, we can make it a little bit sweeter, but that's it. Like, I expect that to be Tom Telesco's approach, and I expect and I know that he has another plan too. Okay, can't get that quarterback, still need to get a quarterback. All right, this might not be option A quarterback, but option B is available. So let's go and get this guy, and let's go get this offensive tackle. Let's work these two together. Like, if you tell me by the end of day 2 of the draft, when I'm flying back from Detroit on Saturday morning, because I got to get back to town to get my haircut. When I'm flying back on Saturday morning while rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 are going on, if you told me that after 2 days of the draft, the Raiders have a quarterback and a starting right tackle, I'm already feeling good. I'm already feeling like the draft has been a huge success. Everything else they get after that is gravy. When they get their cornerback, cool. If they get some more depth at the wide receiver position, cool. They get another running back, cool. A couple more offensive linemen, great. Right? I expect the offensive line to be addressed a couple times in this upcoming draft. So, I just the confidence level. Now, of course, my guy Matt Lombardo, I didn't give him this whole long spiel answer, right? But I just kind of gave him the nuts and bolts. Like, this is why I feel like his experience is going to go a long way. And if you think about it, The Raiders haven't had any experience at that GM position in when? I mean, how long? Right? I mean, Reggie McKenzie, no experience. Mike Mayock, no experience. Dave Ziegler, no experience. Tom Telesco has got the experience. So that's what makes me feel a lot more confident, especially when you have, a coach like Antonio Pierce. It just balances each other out. And I think sometimes you need that. You need to have, someone that you can balance out with. Like, when I do my radio shows, I usually have guys that aren't quite as loud and as excited as me working with me. Because I'm already loud. I'm already excited. I already got the not inside voice. I only got the outside voice. So we need someone that might be a little bit more calm, a little bit more chill, right? A little relaxed. It's really good. Just like working at the radio station. Like my number one assistant who works with me is completely opposite of me. He's never out and about around town. He's never doing all kind of different, events and doing a bunch of different shows, but he does a lot of work behind the scenes. And that's what you need, right? You need the guy that's, the face of the franchise. And then there's a guy behind the scenes that's just as important, if not more important than the face of the franchise. And so that's kind of how it goes. AP is the face of the franchise. Tom Telesco's pulling a lot of the strings and pushing a lot of the buttons. And I do believe he's going to be the guy with the final say when it's all said and done. AP is going to suggest, and suggest some more. But at the end of the day, Tom Telesco's got all the confidence. So I do think this is a really good 1-2 punch. Now, look, we'll soon find out sooner rather than later. I might wake up on April 28th after, the whole draft is said and done and been like, man, I don't know what the hell the Raiders did. I don't expect that that's going to happen, but until we see it, it's a possibility. But again, I just really do have confidence in this pairing. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have confidence in Gruden, because I did. I was excited about Mayock because of what he brought to the table from NFL Network, the knowledge of the players. Not going to lie about that, not going to front. I was willing to give Josh McDaniels an opportunity to be a really good head coach. Thought he was going to get the most out of the Raiders offense. Clearly that didn't work. Still have a ton of respect for Dave Ziegler. I definitely believe that he was onto something, and I believe he brought a lot of talent to the team. I know, a lot of people don't agree with that, and that's okay. Again, just my opinion. You're entitled to yours. I appreciate it. But I do think that he's going to be good. There's a reason why the Saints are working with him now, using him kind of as a consultant to, work through this draft process. So clearly there's someone else besides myself that thinks that Dave Ziegler was worth the salt and, could do some good things. But I do believe Tom Telesco is going to at least put the Raiders in good position with the talent. It's going to be up to AP. It's going to be up to Patrick Graham. It's going to be up to all the coaches to take that talent, run with that talent, and more importantly, win with that talent. So that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Just want to talk about, the confidence level that I have in GM Tom Telesco and head coach AP as we're, less than 3 weeks away from the start of the NFL draft. What's on your mind? 707-654-4693. Matter of fact, you can answer that question as well. What is your confidence level in Telesco and AP as a 1-2 punch, right? A yin and a yang, right? They work together, the Bash brothers, like back in the day, like Seiko and McGuire, right? A 1-2 punch, right? Let us know. Shaq and Kobe when they weren't beefing, right? Stuff like that. That's a great 1-2 punch. Let me know what you think of Telesco and AP. Again, 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Gametime is awesome when it comes to getting tickets. They can get you tickets to anything that you want, anytime that you want, anything that's near you, and normally the prices are really good and reasonable. And matter of fact, the closer it gets to, say, first pitch, the cheaper that the prices actually are. Not only that, when you're there on the app, you're checking out Gametime, you can actually see the view of your seat, where your seat is in the arena, in the theater, whatever the case may be. So have you ever showed up to a game and you saw this, you got the seats that you bought and you're like, I didn't think that this was actually what it was going to look like. You literally can see the seats and know exactly what it's going to look like when you arrive. So there are no surprises. There's nothing worse than thinking that you're getting one thing and end up getting another. You hate to do that. I know I hate to do that. They've got last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. They've got everything that you need. Matter of fact, the last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying for all your sporting events, concerts, comedy, all of that stuff. Right now, just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Cisco Kid. Cisco Kid was a friend of mine. Remember him? Cisco Kid in the 209. He's calling to give a big birthday and accomplishment shout-out. Good way to start off segment number 3. Here he is, the Cisco Kid in 209.
To Raider Nation, good morning. Happy Tuesday, April 9th. Want to send a special shout-out. First of all, this is Cisco Kid, 209, calling from Modesto. Want to send a special shout-out. Happy birthday, feliz cumpleaños to my little brother, Edgar Jaquez. Bro, happy birthday, man. Much respect. This kid made it all the way, street to the west, graduated from Modesto High with honors, graduated with bachelor's degree from Stanislaus State, and is now an accountant for one of the biggest wineries in our town. Edgar, keep on the good work, and love you, man. Keep it going. Q, thank you for all the love, everything you're doing for everybody. Let's go, Raider Nation.
I appreciate the call, my man, and happy birthday. And what a laundry list of accomplishments your brother has achieved, right? That is awesome. I always love to celebrate people's accomplishments. I really do. I like to achieve a lot of goals and accomplish things, and I know how it feels to get to certain points and you achieve something that may look like at one point it's unattainable. To get that, it feels great. And to see other people's do it, I love to celebrate it. So, Cisco Kid, thanks so much for calling in. Happy birthday to your brother. But again, thanks so much for sharing that with us. I think that's really, really cool. Up next, got a text from Vic in Richmond. It says, Q, Vic from Richmond, with the draft a couple weeks away, would you say that a deal to move up needs to happen before draft day? I think if we wait till draft day, the cost will be even higher than it is right now. I hope we can get a deal done soon. If it's going to happen. That's Vic in Richmond. Thanks so much for the text, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, I do believe that it needs to get done ahead of time because exactly what you said. It's funny. I share this story all the time. Being at the Super Bowl in Arizona a couple of seasons ago, we went there. We got there on Sunday. Me and the crew from the radio station that was covering it all week long. We went to this bar right across the street from the convention center on the Sunday that we got there. We ate dinner. Cool. Went there on Monday. Ate dinner. Cool. On Tuesday, we went back there to eat dinner again. I'm a creature of habit, so I go back to the same places. It's convenient. And also, we looked at the menu and realized, whoa, yesterday's price is not today's price. Because it was getting closer and closer to when everyone started to get into town, the prices went up in a major way. So that's the kind of motto I live by all the time. Yesterday's price is not today's price. And what I mean by that when it comes to the draft, what you can get, if you can get that number 2 spot right now, it'll be less than what it will cost on the day of the draft. The Washington Commanders, if they're going to give up that number 2 spot, they know that, hey, look, there's only a certain amount of time for you to get a deal done. You basically are on the phone and you're at their mercy. So you got to get it done quick, fast, and in a hurry. Straight up like that. So I do believe, like you said, that it would make more sense for it to get done ahead of time because, as I said in Arizona, yesterday's price, I should say, is not today's price. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Jay in SoCal. He's calling to talk about the hot topic, which is Michael Penix Jr., and talks about one glaring red flag he has. Here's Raider Jay in SoCal.
Hey, what's up, Q? This is Raider Jay out of SoCal by way of the 510. I was just calling with a quick question based on a hot topic, Michael Penix. My biggest question for you and just getting your thoughts on this is everybody keeps saying that Penix's biggest weakness or the trait that's making him drop or fall in this draft outside of the top 5, top 6 QBs or top 6 draft picks is his injury history. But what doesn't really make sense to me in that sense, if you're the Raiders, is if injury history is your biggest concern and the talent is there, clearly he's put it on tape. Obviously, everybody goes back to the Texas game. And the traits are there. Why would that hold you back from drafting him at 13? I know Telesco already came out and said that he's well aware that your backup QB is one of the most important pieces on your roster, just given all the injuries that went down last year. So your quarterback going down is a reality for all 32 teams, regardless of the guy that you got in there. So I just don't understand why injury history at this point would be the one thing that would make you shy away from drafting him at 13. Obviously, you would want to hit on your first round pick. And picking in the top 15, you'd want it to be a good one for a long time. But I don't know. In my mind, if all the pieces, all the tools are there, and you need that franchise QB, and he looks to be the part, I would overlook injury history in that extent that we already have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell who are fully capable of stepping in there and making things happen to get us wins. And I think Penix long term has the build to be that guy that can go toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes. And ultimately that's the person that you're looking up to each and every year. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I was very curious to see that so many people are overlooking Penix and telling me that he's going to drop strictly because of his injury history. Seems to be a thing of the past. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Appreciate it. All you do, man. Go Raiders.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. And the reality is that, he hasn't been injured recently, right? The last 2 seasons, he hasn't been injured at Washington at all. He suffered all his injuries at Indiana. But the question is, how much did that hurt him for the long haul? Like, I understand that he's healthy right now, but, can he be healthy 5 years from now? Like, those knees, did they get so hurt when he tore his ACLs that, he's going to have, like bad knees in 5 years? Or is his shoulder jacked up where he's going to have shoulder injuries or struggle? His shoulder is going to be, in a bad situation a couple years from now. Like right in the future or right now, it might be great, but the future might not be. So I think that's the biggest question when it comes to Michael Penix. Like, how do teams feel about his medical history and what it's going to look like, say, 5 years from now, 5 or 6 years? Because you want to get 5, 6 good years. You get 5 or 6 good years out of a quarterback, you feel, okay, good. You like to get 10 years, but I'm not trying to be greedy. I'm just saying, if you can get 5 or 6 years, strong, great quarterback play, one solid contract out of him, maybe a fifth-year option and maybe even an extra year or two, great. Again, ideally with a quarterback, you'd like 10 years, but you never know with this game because of the way that it's played. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you, my man. Up next, got a text from JC in the 805. Says, hey, Q. It's JC in the 805. I just heard you shout out Tristan Kuhn on the pod. I'm glad he's getting some recognition from one of the best. I'm not sure if you remember Raider Dot a few seasons ago. Used to wonder if that person was a player or a high-ranking member in the Raiders organization, even MD himself, but I'm positive that it was Tristan. He handles an Instagram account by the name of Raiders.Scouts, formerly Raiders Scouts, where I would get the up-to-minute information on the Raiders during Chucky's run. It would be fun to confirm that it's true if you have a contact with them. P.S. Have you seen Mayock's interview on 3 and Out? I could have butchered the name on YouTube. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Keep doing what you do. JC Raider out. That's JC in the 805. And yeah, I do have Tristan's contacts. I've actually had him on my radio show a couple times. He's a really good dude. So I don't know about the Instagram account. I don't know who Raider Dot is. I don't know any of that. I could always reach out to him and ask him. I don't know if he'd tell me. Maybe he's trying to keep that on the low. Who knows? But he always seems to have some really good information and accurate information. And to me, that's the most important thing. I never care about being first. I just care about being accurate. I don't want to, bring something to the table and tell you this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden it turns out to be completely false. As far as Mayock's interview, I haven't seen it. I've seen it. I've had people send it to me. I've seen him on the show, but I haven't watched that show in particular. I'm just not a big Middlecoff guy, but that's just me, so I just leave that alone. And I saw him actually at the combine, and I actually was going to say, what's up to him and say hello and everything like that and just talk, but I didn't get a chance to. So there's that. But anyway, JC, thanks so much. And maybe I'll check out the interview just to see what Mayock's got to say. I do appreciate you. One more call. We take it from Sucker Free Raider. He's calling to talk about what he calls the Sucker Free 3. Here he is, Sucker Free Raider.
Hey, what's up, Q? Sucker Free Raider and Raider Nation. This part of the show we like to call the Sucker Free 3, where we hit Q with 3 topics real quick. So one of those topics were, does AP get the extra time for, to coach people up? Like they say, when you're a new coach, you get a couple of extra weeks or whatever, or since he was a interim, does he not get that? Number 2 is, it'd be kind of cool if the linemen get another notch under their belt as far as, like, if they start giving these linemen touchdown assists, like, to be on their record, you know what I mean? Because everybody's pushing their running backs into the goal now. That'd be kind of cool. And the last one is, it's I crack up every time you say old in the tooth, because the saying is long in the tooth, but hey, you do what you do, bro. Out. Go right.
Thank you for the call, my man. And I don't believe that the Raiders are getting an early start because of the new head coaching situation. Like you mentioned, AP was a coach there last year on the interim basis. I did wonder that, but since they're starting on April 15th, I don't believe that that qualifies for them because there's some coaches like Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers that have already started. Again, the first workout for the Raiders is on April 15th. The second question about the offensive lineman getting another stat, I don't see that happening either, but that would be kind of cool, right? Right? Give them a little bit of love. Most of the time we talk about offensive linemen, it's always a bad thing. Oh, this O-lineman gave up this, or this O-lineman had this many penalties, this, that, and the other. It would be kind of cool to get him a stat like that, hey, like an assist. In a basketball, you get an assist. It'd be kind of cool if they got a little assist, stat as well. But I'm sure O-linemen are like, you know what? The less you talk about me, that means I'm doing my job really well. As far as the, old in the tooth, long in the tooth, you know how I roll, man. Everything I say is either backwards or wrong. Right. And what I mean by that, it's like I'll say the saying wrong. I'll, use the wrong kind of lingo. You should hear me when I try to speak Spanish. I'm terrible, but I do it anyway. That's just how I get down. I don't mind. That's just part of the character, right? It's just kind of who I am. I have my own language. It's the Q-isms. That's what everyone says. He's got his own Q-isms. I do. And that's one of them. So I'm going to roll with old in the tooth. It could be long in the tooth. It might be a short tooth, just a nasty tooth, right? It's a tooth. So Sucker Free Raider, thanks so much. I do appreciate you. That's all I got time for on today's show. I got a text from Napa Raider we'll get to for sure tomorrow. Jordan in Oregon hit us with a call we'll get to tomorrow. We got a lot more of that feedback as well. Of course, we'll have more news and notes, and we'll see what next direction we go, but we'll have plenty of conversation here on the Locked On Raiders podcast as we do on the daily. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.